The screen cuts to static. A broken transmission cuts through. Movement near sector. Silence follows heavy, as if the air itself holds its breath. Floodlights flare across a snow-swept missile silo. Soldiers brace against the wind, their eyes locked on the tree line. A private's pale face trembles. His breath curls into frozen mist as he whispers, "It's watching us." His gaze is fixed on the dark. Gunfire explodes. Muzzle flashes strobe against the forest. Something immense and upright crosses the light too fast to track. Inside the command post, alarms blare. Red lights flash, silo unsecured. Officers pound consoles, fear infecting the machines. A flare bursts, casting white fire. Towering silhouettes appear, standing beyond the fence, with eyes that glint like coals. The camera tilts to the snow. A helmet lies on its side, blood frozen white. There is no body, no footprints leading away. Grainy footage shows two glowing red eyes staring into the lens. The tape warps, burning out as though the image resists capture. Black-suited officers load sealed crates stamped Project Stargate Echo, all evidence vanishing into steel containers. The narration closes. Some reports were buried not because of the enemies we feared, but because of the shadows we could never name. Frozen dawn spread across the plains. The silence was absolute, broken only by wind and humming generators. The landscape was a silent enemy. The steel lid of a Minuteman silo lay covered in frost. Below rested the most destructive weapon, guarded by young men. Inside, red lights flickered in rhythm. The air smelled of oil and stale coffee. Officers checked gauges with mechanical precision. A wall-sized map showed nuclear sites. Each glowing dot was a promise of retaliation, a crushing reminder of their responsibility. Soldiers gathered outside in formation. Their breath formed clouds. Discipline was the only constant in a world waiting to ignite. The captain's voice was clipped metallic. No mistakes. Not here. Not ever. He was an extension of the Cold War machine. In the armory, men cleaned rifles, metal on metal rang. The weapons gleamed, symbols of control in an uncontrollable world. A recruit fumbled. The sergeant snapped, "Hesitation is death. If you can't manage a rifle, how will you guard a missile?" Guard rotations unfolded. Passwords were exchanged, signatures logged. The monotony was suffocating, but one slip could mean disaster. In the mess hall, trays clattered. Men ate quickly, heads down. A burst of laughter broke the gray monotony for a fleeting moment. A corporal warned a rookie, "Silence out here will eat you alive. You'll start seeing things that aren't there." Radio chatter crackled in clipped code. Static swallowed half the words. To them, it was the heartbeat of vigilance. Supply trucks crunched over icy gravel. Drivers said little, eager to leave this isolated world behind them. From a watchtower, a guard scanned the dark horizon. The forest loomed a vast ocean. Every shadow could be a threat. A patrol, they halted at the fence line. In the snow tracks curved toward the wire, too big for a deer. They were uneasy. Inside the barracks, a motto loomed, "Vigilance without rest." They were both guardians and prisoners of their mission. Sirens wailed as drills began. Every movement was timed. Failure was not an option. An officer addressed to them, "The enemy is always watching. They will strike here." His words were heavy with paranoia. A soldier unfolded a letter. For a moment, the barracks faded. He folded it quickly, ashamed of his longing. The chaplain knelt with a private. The man whispered of dreams of fire. "Faith is the only shield," the chaplain replied. On the firing range, rifles cracked. Brass casings scattered across ice. Each burst was both practice and angry release. The camera panned over crates stamped classified. Rumors whispered of strange monitoring equipment inside. A major wrote in his report, "Morale steady, operations normal, no anomalies." His pen hesitated at the end. Men played cards under a flickering bowl. Banter hid the fatigue etched into their faces, a distraction and a prayer. Medics checked hands and feet for frostbite. The winter was as much a foe as any infiltrator. Outside, the wind rattled fences. It sounded like whispers carried across the plain. Guards shifted at their posts. A private muttered, "It feels like the earth is listening." His partner snorted. But they both glanced nervously at the tree line. Officers slammed maps onto a table. The order: protect the missiles at all costs. Failure is unthinkable. Photographs of family hung above bunks, reminders of what was at stake, what may never be seen again. Surveillance cameras rotated, their motors humming. Their eyes never closed, but shadows slipped between frames. The forest pressed against the wire. At night, it swallowed the floodlights. To stand guard was to stare into a void. Guards changed shifts, their nods brief and weary. Their camaraderie was not in words, but in shared endurance. Official reports described the unit as alert, disciplined, fully capable. It was a mask for the outside world. A lone guard stood silhouetted against the lights. His finger hovered near the trigger. Every nerve strained with awareness. The narrator closed, they were soldiers. Yet in these forests another shadow stirred, one no manual had prepared them for. The night watch began under a pale moon. Guards scanned the tree line, their breath frosting. The silence was heavier than usual. A radio operator frowned as static drowned out chatter. The interference felt like whispers buried beneath the frequency. A soldier in the watchtower swore he saw movement. Binoculars revealed only darkness, but his hand lingered on the trigger. A patrol reported unusual prints elongated and heavy heading toward the silos. The report was dismissed as elk migration. Cameras picked up a blurred figure near the wire. When the feed was rewound, the screen showed nothing but snow. A corporal found strange claw marks on a fence post. Maintenance logs read weather damage. The men knew better. Conversations at mess were hushed. Something was out there, a soldier whispered. Don't start, his friend replied. A guard dog refused to leave its kennel, growling at the tree line. Its panic was an unsettling sign. The chaplain reminded soldiers, fear is the oldest enemy. Stand firm. Yet his own voice trembled slightly. A silo's electronic lock shorted out. Engineers blamed the cold, but the timing unsettled command. During a patrol, floodlights flickered and died. When they returned, the forest seemed closer, as if the darkness had shifted. An officer noted in the log unusual power fluctuations. Recommend further monitoring. A private woke screaming, insisting something was watching him from outside, though his bunk faced the courtyard. The medical officer diagnosed exhaustion. Still, the soldier refused to sleep near the window again. A static recording surfaced, a low guttural growl layered beneath the wind. Analysts couldn't identify the source. On patrol, a man reported a foul odor from the forest's wet fur and rot. By morning, the smell was gone. A radar technician swore his scope lit up with an unidentified moving object. When checked again, nothing remained. In a briefing, senior officers dismissed these anomalies as coincidences. Their eyes betrayed their own unease. Guards whispered about tall shadows that vanished when floodlights swept the fence. No one filed a report. A soldier found fresh blood on the snow, but no body. He noted the find in his personal journal. A convoy driver reported seeing a tall figure cross the road at dawn. His account was labeled a hallucination. A private sketched a massive humanoid figure. His squad confiscated the notebook, warning him not to spread panic. At the firing range, weapons malfunctioned. The sergeant cursed the cold, but the men looked at each other nervously. The chaplain's sermons shifted toward unseen evils. His prayers became more fervent. Attendance grew. A guard reported 2 red eyeshine glints in the distance. When floodlights were aimed, nothing remained. Power to one sector of the fence failed. Crews worked all night, though no parts showed where. The logs read, equipment failure. A sergeant wrote in his notes, this is not fatigue. The men are right. Something moves out there. A civilian technician refused to return for a second shift, telling command, the woods don't want me there. The chaplain confronted the commanding officer. The officer ordered him to say nothing more. At dawn, massive footprints stretched toward the forest. Photographs were taken, then confiscated by intelligence. That night, dogs howled at the tree line. Guards fired warning shots. The howls instantly ceased as if cut off. A technician reviewing film noticed a dark figure. The frame blurred as if the emulsion resisted capturing it. The commanding officer issued a statement. All reports of unidentified figures are classified. Discussion is prohibited. Men grew restless. Whispers spread of something tall circling the silos. Fear began to outweigh discipline. The narrator closed, these soldiers trained for human enemies. But what stalked them was nothing in their manuals. Night fell heavy over the fields. The stars shimmered strangely, pulsing in the sky. Men muttered that even the heavens felt unsettled. A guard's report cut off. His last words, movement near sector, ended in static. The command center froze in silence. A patrol found his rifle in churned snow. Wide depressions, heavy unnatural prints stretched to the tree line. Command called for lockdown. Sirens wailed, floodlights burst on, and men rushed to defensive positions, eyes wide with fear. Soldiers formed a line. Rifles rose in unison, but their hands trembled despite training. Every heartbeat sounded like thunder. The kennels erupted in desperate rattling. Then the noise cut off. The silence that followed was worse than chaos. A sergeant tried to bark orders, but his voice cracked. His calm collapsed, and soldiers gripped their weapons tighter. Power surges swept the systems. Screens flickered, alarms flared. Silo doors registered unsecured, triggering panic. Men rushed to override controls. An officer whispered, "If those hatches open," but couldn't finish the thought. A patrol reported a massive figure. Gunfire erupted, strobing the night. When the smoke cleared, nothing was there. The fence was bent inward steel, warped like clay. The official log called it impact damage, but no vehicle was near. Whispers spread. It didn't fall, it stepped back. The idea corroded confidence like an infection. A corporal was found collapsed. His parka was shredded, deep gashes in the skin. Medics could not match the wounds. Command suppressed the report, labeling it an equipment accident. The men who saw the wounds knew the truth. A fuel truck refused to start. Mechanics found cables torn by raw force. Like a bear, one muttered, but the tracks were not a bear's. One by one, floodlights exploded. Darkness spread. Men fired at shadows, but bullets vanished beyond the fence. Flares streaked upward. For a second, the tree line was alive with swift, hulking shapes vanishing between trees before eyes could focus. An operator tore off his headphones, blood trickling from his ears. He claimed he heard monstrous breathing inside the signal. Alarms shrieked. Multiple silos flashed unlocked. Men imagined nuclear fire unleashed by unseen hands. Engineers insisted the readings were false. Still, the fear lingered. If they can touch the missiles, someone whispered. In the barracks, soldiers argued. Some demanded evacuation. Others shouted treason. The arguments grew louder than the alarms. The chaplain stood with his Bible voice hoarse. Hold fast. Fear is the oldest enemy. His eyes betrayed his own terror. A patrol on the west fence radioed back. Glowing red eyes were circling in the dark more than they could number. Command ordered all personnel to fall back to bunkers. The compound was blindingly bright, but beyond the wire was a void. A private insisted he saw a creature studying them. His account was struck from the report. The fear it planted remained. Another guard vanished during rotation. His rifle was bent at a grotesque angle, as if twisted by immense force. Search teams called his name. Their shouts echoed, answered only by the wind. No trace was found. One searcher found a tree split in half, deep gouges in the wood. He knew no tool did this. A team found dual tracks boots beside massive humanoid prints. Both vanished abruptly, as if swallowed by the earth. Inside the bunker, arguments erupted. A lieutenant insisted on holding, a sergeant demanded retreat. The commanding officer pounded the table. "This unit does not break. We are guardians." His hand shook as he spoke. Two privates nearly came to blows. The bond of discipline frayed. Panic was eroding their unity. Lights died again. In the blackness, a scream pierced the air. Then bursts of automatic fire echoed, cutting through the night. When power returned, two men were missing. Blood stained the snow. There were no bodies, only silence. Official logs claimed equipment malfunction, casualties sustained. The soldiers knew the lie, and it deepened their despair. Tally marks appeared on the barracks wall. One line for each man missing. The number grew quickly. Radio static swelled, carrying distorted voices. Names of soldiers were whispered back to them in inhuman tones. The chaplain lit candles. His prayers became frantic as fear consumed him. Men crowded outside, desperate for some barrier. Patrols heard heavy thuds like footsteps too large for a human pacing parallel to their own. Surveillance footage showed a blurred form crossing between towers. Its height dwarfed the fence. The tape blurred. Panic surged when alarms screamed, "Access breach." The silo hatch appeared untouched, but soldiers swore it vibrated. Around the hatch, massive prints spiraled outward. Even officers could not find words to explain it. Command prepared an emergency message. Just before it transmitted, the entire communications grid collapsed. Realization sank in. They were cut off, isolated with whatever stalked them. The forest loomed closer with every heartbeat. Under blood-red dusk, floodlights strained against the dark. The forest felt closer, as if it was advancing on them. Alarms flared. Radar detected multiple contacts circling. Officers confirmed not vehicles, not aircraft, unknown entities. Guards rushed to the wire. Tall shadows moved at impossible speed. Floodlights swept, but every glimpse vanished. A sergeant fired a warning burst. The forest answered with a low howl that vibrated through the ground itself. Dogs in kennels snapped chains, then collapsed in terror or vanished when the lights failed. All communications died. Radios, phones, and backups sank into static. The command post was deaf and blind. Officers pounded consoles. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the men's panicked breathing. At the northern fence, a massive figure stood, its humanoid proportions wrong under the flare light. Rifles blazed, tracers streaked through the air. The figure did not fall, it simply melted back into the tree line. When the smoke cleared, the fence was torn steel, twisted outward, as if something had forced its way inside. Troops rushed to seal the breach. Their boots crunched on huge prints, each deeper than a man's knee. Panic spread. Some demanded retreat, others held. Unity shattered under the weight of terror. At Silo 3, alarms screamed. Control panels registered unauthorized access. Soldiers stormed the hatch. They found the steel lid vibrating as if immense hands pressed from above. Men fired into the night. The vibration ceased. The hatch was still, but claw marks gouged the frozen metal surface. A lieutenant vomited from shock. Others dragged him back, muttering prayers in the chaos. Searchlights scanned wildly. Dozens of glowing red eyes flashed in the dark, watching from the forest edge. A soldier collapsed, clutching his head. He swore the static's voices were now inside his skull. Gunfire erupted again. Soldiers shot at shadows as officers shouted futilely for discipline. The forest absorbed the bullets, returning only silence. Fear grew heavier than the cold. The guard tower was slammed. Wood and steel splintered. Men fell screaming from above. Survivors rushed to drag them back. One body was missing, only a helmet left in blood-stained snow. Medics worked in chaos. Wounds were jagged deep, unlike any weapon known. Not claws, one whispered. Officers huddled. Orders degraded into fragments. Hold sector. Evacuate ammo. Seal the silos. Another flare lit a hulking silhouette crossing the field 3 meters tall, moving upright, deliberate. Men opened fire. Tracers carved arcs, but the figure vanished as though swallowed whole by the night. Soldiers retreated deeper into the compound. Some abandoned posts, fleeing to bunkers without orders. The chaplain stood, Bible-raised voice booming prayers. For a moment, men rallied around him. A roar shattered the night, drowning his voice. The men scattered, some dropping their weapons. Floodlights exploded in sequence, plunging the base into total darkness. The forest had finally invaded. In the chaos, ammo dumps were sealed. Explosives were stacked against doors in desperation. A soldier reported seeing not one but a group 3, maybe 4 massive figures stalking the wire. Command realized this was a coordinated presence. The implications drove fear deeper than bullets. Another tower collapsed. Men inside screamed. The sound cut short. Silence followed, heavier than death. Survivors gathered, rifles shaking. Officers barked orders, but few listened. The chain of command dissolved. A private whispered, "They're testing us. They're not even trying yet." His words spread like poison. Panic erupted. One soldier fired at a comrade, mistaking him for the enemy. The unit fractured. Officers pulled back to the bunker, sealing the doors. Only a fraction of the unit remained outside. Inside, systems flickered. Missile status lights shifted as if an invisible hand was playing with the launch keys. Dawn breaks gray and cold. Smoke drifts from collapsed towers. Silence reigns where alarms once screamed. Survivors emerge slowly from bunkers, rifles slack in their hands. Their faces are pale hollow, as though they aged decades overnight. Snow in the yard is trampled. Boot prints overlap with massive tracks that lead into the forest, then vanish without a trail. A medic kneels by a bloodstain, running fingers over the snow. No bodies were recovered. Only absence remained. Officers gather in the command post. Reports are drafted with sterile phrases, failing to capture what truly occurred. A lieutenant lights a cigarette with shaking hands. He exhales slowly, muttering, "We never stood a chance." In the chapel, the chaplain prays alone. His voice cracks. The pews are empty. Faith felt abandoned. Men begin dismantling what remains. Floodlights are replaced, and towers are reinforced, though their morale is gone. Engineers study claw marks in steel. They write stress fractures due to weather in logs, but no one believes it. Intelligence officers arrive, collecting evidence. Photos, recordings, and journals disappear into black cases. Soldiers watch silently as their notes are taken away. The weight of secrecy presses heavier than fear. A survivor tries to describe red eyes and towering shapes. His statement is cut short. An officer writes hallucinations. At the mess hall, men sit in silence. Food goes untouched. Every clang of a tray echoes like gunfire. A corporal stares at the tally of the missing. He carves another line. The officer in charge orders it painted over. One private refuses to leave the barracks at night, muttering that voices still call his name from the dark. A convoy arrives to transport wounded. Soldiers load stretchers with grim silence. Many carry only helmets and rifles. Families will receive letters with vague words like training accident and classified incident, omitting the terror. Command issues. Strict orders. Discussion of the event is prohibited. This file is sealed under Project Stargate Echo. Survivors exchange glances. They know what they saw, but their voices are stolen before they can speak. At night, guards refuse to patrol alone. Pairs move nervously, flashlights jittering across the snow. A helicopter departs with sealed crates. Inside are twisted rifles, shredded uniforms, and forbidden film reels. A soldier writes in his diary, "The enemy we fought was not of this world." He hides the diary under his bunk. Medics report nightmares, visions of towering shapes, rattling doors, and whispers echoing in static. The chaplain admits, "I prayed for strength. I feel abandoned." His confession is struck from the record. Officers compile a final report. Entire paragraphs are redacted, burying the truth beneath black ink. A private on his final watch whispers, "It's still out there, watching." His relief finds him trembling. The forest is calm, but men swear they hear faint, deliberate thuds at night. The unit is rotated out, replaced by fresh troops unaware of what occurred. As trucks roll away, soldiers avoid looking back, each man carrying a ghost the military will never acknowledge. The war was no longer against nations. It was against shadows that refused to die. Weeks later, snow blankets the compound, but some footprints never faded no matter how many storms passed. New recruits arrived unaware. The old guard watched them with hollow eyes, burdened by memories they couldn't share. Intelligence officers circulated, reminding survivors of their oaths. Files were signed. Silences were enforced. A corporal noticed official maps were redrawn, redacted zones labeled communications failures. The truth was erased. Rumors drifted into towns. Locals spoke of strange howls at night, of animals avoiding the silo forests. A hunter reported massive tracks near a creek. He swore they were human-shaped, but 3 times larger. Survivors suffered nightmares, red eyes, glowing doors, rattling voices, whispering through static. One private was discharged for psychological instability. He insisted creatures still followed him, even in daylight. A former officer later confided, "It wasn't just one. There were many, watching, testing us." A sealed report stamped Project Stargate Echo circulated briefly. Entire pages were blacked out. In Washington, committees discussed silo vulnerabilities, but never mentioned the word Bigfoot. A scientist reviewing photos noted claw marks in steel. He muttered, "No known primate could," before the record cut. Surviving soldiers gathered rarely. Conversation faltered at the memory, and laughter died quickly. One survivor kept a hidden sketchbook, hulking silhouette circles of tracks, a fence bent inward. He showed no one. At night, even years later, some woke convinced they heard the same guttural howl beneath layers of sleep. Families asked questions. Answers came in letters filled with vague phrases like classified incident. Locals noticed helicopters sweeping forests at night, beams of light, probing where civilians were forbidden to go. Hunters vanished in the surrounding hills. Their disappearances were written off as accidents. Whispers suggested otherwise. Radio enthusiasts picked up strange static. Some swore they heard breathing and voices repeating call signs from the dead. The chaplain resigned, retreating into silence. His final sermon, "Some wars are not meant to be fought by men." Analysts debated whether the phenomenon was natural, psychological, or something else. No consensus was reached. The military buried all evidence, but fragments slipped into folklore. Myths took root. Civilian researchers found uncanny overlap between public Bigfoot sightings and classified reports. One researcher noted, "Why near nuclear weapons guardians warnings, or something worse?" Reports emerged in other states, Nevada, Washington, North Dakota, always near silos, always red eyes. A retired sergeant confessed, "We fought something not human." The interview tape was quickly seized. Decades later, declassified fragments hinted at unexplained security anomalies. Files remained incomplete. Survivors now old carried the same haunted look. They refused to speak of the winter in Montana. The final shot lingered on the forest, still and indifferent. The silence felt watchful. The narrator closed, "The reports remained sealed, but the shadows never left."